Did you go to jail?
Yeah, twice.
What were the circumstances of your
Well,
arrest?
in '63, Easter Sunday, N.H. Smith, A.D. King, John Porter, and me, we led the march in '63 from Thurgood CME Church. At that time, it was on 11th Avenue, 7th Avenue and 11th Street. And we led that particular march, and we got arrested after we had gotten about a couple of blocks. Chief Jamie Moore and his stormtroopers came down on us, and we all got arrested.
How long did you remain in jail?
On that account, I was in for 5 days, and then the next time I went to jail, when we had a trial, and Bull Connor had issued order to the judge to fine all the niggas $100 in 6 months, 180 days. And Judge Brown was adjudicating the trials. And in the middle of this particular trial, he died, had a heart attack and died.
On the bench?
On the bench. And we had prayer for the fallen brother. And as soon as they hauled Judge Brown out, Bull Connor sent for Judge Conway. And as soon as Judge Conway sat in the seat that Judge Brown had died in, Bull Connor said, continue giving all the niggas $100 fine and 180 days. And we went off to jail.
So he was really in control.
He ran Birmingham. There were 2 other commissioners, but he ran Birmingham. They were more or less figureheads.
Did others in your family participate?
My younger brothers and sisters were in the marches, but none of them ever got arrested.
What was the reaction of your family to your involvement?
Well, my family was 100% behind me because, as I told you earlier, we didn't pick fights, but we didn't run from fights. We get in the middle of it. 100% support.
You were still a single man at the time during the '63 demonstrations?
Yeah, I was a bachelor, as a matter of fact, until I became 37.
What church were you a member of at the time?
At that time, it was called First Baptist Annisburg, but it's now called Antioch, and it's down on 54th Street here in Upper Fairfield.
What was the level of involvement of the church and your pastor at that time?
Well, I was a member of the church, but I was zooming around, knowing everything going on. I wasn't really active in the church
How would you,
at that time.
right, I know later on you would become a minister, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But how would you say the community of Birmingham Metropolitan benefited from the movement that was organized by yourself and others that you've discussed?
Oh, as I said earlier, the 2 main things, as I see it, was that we were able to get the folk philosophically ready and psychologically ready, from the standpoint of psychologically ready, not to be afraid to protest, and that the only way we were going to get some changes was through direct action.
What were you doing after the demonstrations of '63?
Well, I finished Miles in May '62, and Dr. Pitts hired me as director of public relations and alumni affairs in June of that same year. So even during the time when we were in this elected bond campaign and demonstration, I was working here at Miles College. So I continued to work here to help Dr. Pitts build this institution.
Was SNCC ever involved with organization here at Miles
No,
or in Birmingham?
SNCC, CORE, all of those groups would come through here from time to time and talk with us, and they wanted to get involved in it, but we believed that we would be more effective if the students who were involved in the fight were from Birmingham.
So did you discourage people from outside from participating?
We didn't really discourage them, but what we told them that was that this was a homegrown movement, and if they wanted to give us their support, fine. But in terms of the mechanics, we would operate that.
How many students were involved at Miles at the time? You know, just in terms of, I know in terms of your negotiation, you had just a few people involved.
Right.
But at the height of the movement, for instance, at high schools and at junior high schools, kids left the schools and became involved in the demonstration. How did that transpire here at Miles?
Well, after we got the Selective Mind campaign going, on one weekend, we got a petition, and we got all the Miles College students we could find to sign it. So I would imagine some 600 or 700 signed it, and then we got citizens from the community to sign it. And we took that petition down to the courthouse at City Hall and presented it to Bull Connor and Jabo Wagner and Art Haynes, who were the other two commissioners. And the group who took the petition down there was U.W. Clement, Frank Dukes, Jonathan McPherson, and Shelley Millender. And we had alerted the press that we were going to be there. So the press was there when we got there. So when they got through with the city's business, Bull Connor wanted to know if anyone else had anything they wanted to say. So Clement was our first spokesman. And Clement got up to talk about we wanted black policemen and firemen and internal revenue, just everything that we got now. And Bull Connor cursed Clement out, called him a bunch of niggas, and told him that before there would be black policemen in Birmingham, niggas would be deacons in the First Baptist Church. That was the big white First Baptist Church up on 21st Street, I think 4th Avenue at that time. And McPherson got up and made his speech. Then I got up and made my speech. And some of the persons in Birmingham who were in cahoots with the police department.
These are black persons?
Yeah, snitches. Okay. Had told Bull Connor that I was not from Birmingham, that I was from Detroit, down here stirring up trouble. So Bull Connor told me, said, well, if you don't like the way I run Birmingham, why don't you leave and go back to Detroit? I said, this is my hometown, just like it is yours, and I'm going to stay here until we get it right. And he didn't say another word.
So he reacted to Clemens, but he didn't react to either of the others?
He reacted to McPherson, too. I just don't remember the terminology that he used. But he didn't say anything to me other than what I said.
What did you do? Do you remember what happened after that?
Well, we had a press conference down at Thurgood CME Church, and they wrote it up and it was on TV and all that. That was about the size of that.
But then that is part of that organization.
All part and parcel, yeah.
Yeah, to get other people involved.
Right. And it gave a lot of people, black folk, courage, because people were, both black and white, were literally afraid of Bull Connor, because when the news got out that we were going down there to challenge Bull Connor, people were calling our homes and begging us not to go, because they said
people like who? Friends of yours?
Black folk and white folk who knew our families would call and say, don't go, because you're going to get killed down there. But we were committed.
So there was real concern about the safety of those who had nerve enough to challenge.
Because it was a dangerous thing to do.
Well, were you, your family, ever physically threatened with violence as a result of your activity?
Not to my knowledge. that I can recall. No.
Then, what about faculty other than Dr. McPherson?
Other than Dr. McPherson, Abraham Woods. I can think of no other faculty member who actively participated and who went to jail and all that kind of stuff, other than Abraham Woods.
What about activity on campus? Were they supportive in terms of allowing students to do certain things?
Well, as far as I knew, none of the faculty members fought the students. Matter of fact, the faculty cooperated because President Pitts was helping us spearhead this thing. So they worked with us from that standpoint.
When you were making this effort to organize people, develop the selective buying campaign, what stands out in your mind more than anything else?
I would guess when we first started meeting with those white power structure gentlemen, first meetings they addressed us all as niggers, and about the third meeting we became boys, and about the fourth, fifth meeting, then we were on first name basis. And you'd have to have been under bondage to understand why that would stand out.
You now had been away from Birmingham. You'd been in the military. You lived in Detroit. Others, I guess, Dr. McPherson had probably been away. I'm not sure about Millinger and Clemens. They were younger. What do you think provided the courage for those of you who had been away, but more so those who had not, probably not been away from Birmingham?
Well, I didn't get my courage because I had been away.
Okay.
As I told you, when I was a little boy, I was always getting in fights. I always had it.
So you're being a little bit older, and I had the same experience. I was older when I went into college. So younger people would sort of flock around you. You were sort of the catalyst for others around you because of really your background.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that engendered the Miles College students to get involved was last name was Lowe. I was trying to think of his first name, but a gentleman who was a producer with ABC. He came down to Birmingham with a camera crew, and I'm sure you've read about it. They did a documentary on the race question here in Birmingham, and they showed it all over the country, and it was called Who Speaks for Birmingham. And many of us spoke, and of those of us who spoke, including citizens from the Birmingham community, they highlighted what I said and what Shelley Miller said and a few others. And the students at Miles College, to see us on the screen define the white power structure and the Klan and all these people, they got courage.
So that courage was infectious.
Yeah.
And really people became proud of being able to do what you all were doing.
Right, right.
And so therefore they started to take part.
Right, and then everybody was hungry for some freedom, because we had none, you know.
Are there any issues that we have not touched on that you would like to just mention before we end our session today?
Nothing other than, if it were possible for Bull Connor to be alive, I'd like to see him around here to see Federal Judge U.W. Clement on that 7th floor up there looking out over Birmingham, who he said better leave out of Birmingham. If he ever came back down there, he was going to have his head beat to a mush. And to see the mayor who's black, police chief who's black, with 4 or 5 deputy police chiefs who are black, the head fire person is black, the head of the sanitation department is black. This stuff that we had in our statement that we wanted to happen has happened.
The changes are your greatest revenge.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And it does my heart a lot of good when I go into department stores, Internal Revenue, or Social Security, see black folk who are supervisors and all that kind of stuff, managers. Before the demonstrations and selective buying campaign, when you saw a black person in a building downtown, he had a mop and a broom, or she had a mop and a broom.
So all of that changes as a result of people developing courage,
Right.
to stand on their own 2 feet
With prayer.
with prayer.
With prayer.